Viewer advisory. The events you are about to witness are based on a true story. Some scenes may be deeply unsettling for certain audiences. Viewer discretion is strongly recommended. The text message arrived at 7:46 a.m. on a cold February morning in 2024, but the words burned through the screen like fire. Send the police at 3 held hostage. Don't call. A mother's hands trembled as she read the desperate plea from her 20-year-old daughter, Mahogany Jackson, who was fighting for her life somewhere in Birmingham. What Gail didn't know was that her daughter had been enduring unimaginable torture for over 24 hours, and this text would be Mahogany's final attempt to save herself. Have you ever trusted someone who turned out to be dangerous? Because what happened to Mahogany Jackson will show you just how deadly that mistake can be. Tonight's story is one that will leave you rattled. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, let's begin. Mahogany Jackson was living the struggle that so many young mothers know. At just 20 years old, she had moved from her hometown of Jasper, Alabama to Birmingham with dreams bigger than her circumstances. Her entire world revolved around her 3-year-old daughter, Nydia, who was the beating heart of everything she did. Mahogany loved the color pink and dreamed of becoming a cosmetologist, working toward building something beautiful for her little girl. She was determined to leave behind the mistakes of her past and create a future where her daughter would never want for anything. But Birmingham streets don't always let you walk away clean. Some connections from your past refuse to let you go, and Mahogany was about to learn this lesson in the cruelest way possible. In the weeks leading up to February 2024, Mahogany had been dealing with a problem that was eating at her. Someone had stolen her gun, and she knew exactly who had taken it. This wasn't just about a missing weapon. It was about respect, trust, and standing up for herself in a world where showing weakness could get you killed. On February 24th, 2024, Mahogany made a decision that would cost her everything. She decided to confront 24-year-old Brandon Pope, the man who had stolen from her. Brandon wasn't some random criminal. He was part of her social circle, someone she knew from the streets of Birmingham. When Mahogany found him, she wasn't playing games. She pulled out her own weapon and demanded he return what belonged to her. But Mahogany wanted to send a message that went beyond just getting her property back. In front of his friends, she forced Brandon to strip down to his underwear at gunpoint. For a man trying to maintain his reputation on the streets, this was the ultimate humiliation. Brandon stood there, nearly naked, while this young woman held him at gunpoint. His friends watched as Mahogany made him look weak and powerless. In that moment, something dangerous shifted in the room. The embarrassment was eating at Brandon, and his rage was building to a breaking point. After Mahogany retrieved her gun, she left, probably thinking the matter was settled. She had made her point, gotten what she came for, and taught Brandon not to steal from her again. But she was catastrophically wrong. The humiliation Brandon felt wouldn't just disappear with time. As soon as Mahogany was gone, his fury consumed him. The fact that a woman had embarrassed him in front of his crew was something he couldn't let slide. Brandon looked at his friends, Francis Harris, Jeremiah McDowell, and the others who had witnessed his shame, and gave him a command that would seal Mahogany's fate. Do something to her. Those 4 words launched one of the most brutal crimes Birmingham had ever seen. What started as Mahogany trying to recover stolen property was about to become a 30-hour nightmare that would end with her death. And the most horrifying part? Every single person who would torture and kill her was someone she knew and trusted. Within hours of his humiliation, Brandon Pope had assembled a group of 8 people ready to make Mahogany pay for what she had done. These weren't hardened criminals or gang members. They were people from Mahogany's own social circle. People she had laughed with, spent time with, and considered friends. The group included Francis Harris, 25, Jeremiah McDowell, 18, Giovanni Clapp, 23, Blair Green, 25, Senia McCall, 23, Taja Lewis, 26, and Ariana Robinson, 23. They found Mahogany and took her captive. What happened next would span more than 30 hours and move across multiple locations throughout Birmingham. The group wasn't just angry, they were methodical. They planned to make Mahogany suffer for as long as possible, moving her from apartment to apartment to avoid detection. The physical abuse was relentless. They beat her repeatedly until her body was broken and bruised. They sexually assaulted her in ways that police would later describe as beyond comprehension. But the physical torture was only part of their cruelty. They also broke her down mentally, telling her she was going to die, making her beg for her life, then giving her false hope that they might let her go if she cooperated. Perhaps the most shocking aspect of this crime was their decision to film it. Multiple members of the group took out their phones and recorded what they were doing to Mahogany, creating evidence that would later convict them. Police Chief Scott Thurmond would later say the suspect's decision to videotape portions of this horrific act made the facts of the case undeniably public. These weren't people trying to hide their crimes. They were proud of what they were doing. They wanted to remember it. They wanted to show others. As the hours passed, the abuse escalated. What started as revenge for Brandon's humiliation had transformed into something much darker. The group fed off each other's energy, each person trying to outdo the others in terms of cruelty. For more than a day, Mahogany endured torture that would break most people. Through it all, she held on to hope that somehow she might survive. She begged for her life, promised she wouldn't tell anyone what happened, and pleaded with them to think about her 3-year-old daughter who needed her mother. They showed no mercy, but Mahogany refused to give up. Even after hours of unimaginable abuse, she was still looking for a way to survive. On the morning of February 25th, she found what she thought might be her last chance. At 7:46 a.m., after more than 24 hours of torture, Mahogany saw an opportunity when her captors let their guard down for just a moment. She grabbed her phone and typed the most important message of her life. Send the police at 3 held hostage. Don't call. She hit send and prayed her mother would see in time. Back home, Gail was starting her morning when her phone buzzed. When she read the message, her world stopped. Her daughter was in mortal danger and needed help immediately. Gail called 911 without hesitation, and police rushed to the Serenity Apartments on Serenity Drive, where Mahogany's message indicated she was being held. But when officers broke down the door to apartment 3, it was empty. The group had already moved Mahogany to another location, staying one step ahead of law enforcement. Meanwhile, Mahogany's captors discovered what she had done. When they found the text message, their anger reached a new level of rage. But instead of killing her immediately, they saw an opportunity for more control. They forced Mahogany to unlock her phone and give them her passcode, promising that if she cooperated, they would let her live. Mahogany, desperate to survive and return to her daughter, gave them everything they demanded. It was just another lie in a long series of lies. The group had no intention of letting Mahogany go. They had already decided her fate, and her desperate attempt to call for help had only sealed it. After obtaining Mahogany's phone password, the group made their final decision. Frances Harris, the 25-year-old who would be identified as the shooter, took control of what happened next. They loaded Mahogany into a vehicle and drove her to a remote area in Birmingham, an isolated spot where they thought no one would find her body. When they reached the dump site, Mahogany probably still believed she might survive. She had given them everything they asked for, cooperated completely, and endured more than 30 hours of torture without fighting back. Maybe they would keep their word. But as Mahogany stood at that remote location, probably hoping her nightmare was finally over, Frances Harris raised his gun and shot her in the back of the head. The execution was quick and cold. After everything she had survived, after all the hope she had held on to, Mahogany Jackson's life ended with a single gunshot. The group didn't just leave her body there. They tried to hide their crime by covering her with old mattresses and debris, treating her like garbage instead of the young mother she was. They thought they could make her disappear completely, as if she had never existed. For hours, Mahogany's body lay hidden while her family desperately searched for answers. Her mother was still hoping police would find her alive. Her 3-year-old daughter was waiting for mommy to come home. But on February 26th, their worst fears became reality when a witness discovered something that didn't belong under those mattresses. The discovery of Mahogany's body set off a chain reaction that brought swift justice. The Birmingham community was outraged, and tips poured into police. Within days, law enforcement had identified all 8 suspects. The same videos the group had filmed to document their crimes became the evidence that would convict them. One by one, the arrests began. Brandon Pope, Francis Harris, and Jeremiah McDowell were charged with capital murder, charges that carry the possibility of the death penalty in Alabama. Giovanni Clapp, Blair Green, and Senia McCall faced charges of felony murder, first-degree kidnapping, and first-degree sodomy. Taja Lewis was charged with felony murder, while Ariana Robinson was charged with felony murder in connection with kidnapping. All 8 suspects were denied bond, meaning they would remain in jail while awaiting trial. Police Chief Scott Thurmond, a veteran law enforcement officer, called it one of the most heinous acts he had seen in his career. He described the facts as deplorable and sickening, and said the crime was absolutely disgusting. Their decision to videotape their own brutality had created an undeniable trail that led police directly to their doors. These weren't career criminals or hardened killers. They were young adults from Birmingham who made the fatal mistake of documenting their own crimes. As the legal proceedings continue, justice moves forward. Despite some charges being modified during preliminary hearings, the core charges of capital murder and felony murder remain. The overwhelming evidence, including the videos they created themselves, has made this case ironclad. The real tragedy extends beyond Mahogany to the innocent lives she left behind. Her 3-year-old daughter Nydia lost the most important person in her world. At such a young age, she couldn't understand why her mommy wasn't coming home anymore. Mahogany's mother Gail had to find strength not only to deal with her own unbearable grief, but to help her granddaughter understand an incomprehensible loss. The Birmingham community rallied around Mahogany's memory, holding vigils and demanding justice. The most disturbing revelation was learning about the videos. The fact that 8 people had filmed themselves torturing and murdering a young mother showed a level of cruelty that defied understanding. But those same videos that demonstrated their inhumanity became the key to justice. Every piece of footage they recorded became evidence against them. In trying to preserve their moment of power over Mahogany, they had actually preserved the evidence that would convict them. Mahogany Jackson's story teaches us painful but vital lessons about trust, safety, and the people we allow into our lives. The most shocking aspect wasn't just the brutality, it was that every person who hurt her was someone she knew. This wasn't a random attack by strangers. These were people from her social circle who chose violence over humanity. There were warning signs that could have saved Mahogany's life. When someone steals from you, that reveals their character. When people around you solve problems with violence and humiliation, that's dangerous. When your social circle includes people who prioritize respect and reputation over human decency, you might be in grave danger. Today, all 8 defendants face the consequences of their choices. Their cases continue through the justice system, with the overwhelming evidence against them making conviction virtually certain. Francis Harris faces the possibility of the death penalty for pulling the trigger. The others face life in prison for their roles in this horrific crime. The community has seen justice begin to unfold. The people who tortured and murdered Mahogany Jackson are behind bars, facing the full weight of the law. Their decision to film their crimes became their downfall, creating undeniable evidence of their guilt. Mahogany Jackson should be alive today, watching her daughter Nydia grow up and pursuing her dreams of becoming a cosmetologist. Instead, her life was cut short by people who chose cruelty over compassion. But her story serves as a powerful reminder that justice can and will prevail, even in the darkest circumstances. The 8 people who destroyed Mahogany's life learned that their actions have consequences. They traded their freedom and futures for a few hours of violence, and now they will pay that price for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, Mahogany's memory lives on, honored by a community that refused to let her story be forgotten. Justice has been served, and it came swift and certain. The killer's own evidence convicted them. Their victims' courage in sending that final text led police to the truth, and the legal system responded with the full force of the law. Mahogany Jackson's story ended in tragedy, but her killer's stories will end behind bars, where they belong. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. If you haven't already, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We upload new true crime content daily, covering cases you know and many you don't. Stick with us as we bring you more stories that deserve to be heard. See you in the next video.